Hello and welcome back to Weston the Historian. Today I wanted to discuss what makes art good and what makes art bad, because this is something that people have talked about for centuries. Right now people are talking about it. People are talking about modern artists and they say modern artists are good, modern artists are bad. And of course there's lots of philosophical treatises on this. There's a lot of debate about this, so I wanted to talk about this issue. I also wanted to say that this will be my last video with this environment for the most part, because I will be going to college soon. How fun is that? So, anyway, in my opinion, think that what makes art good is that the artist has a true belief in what they are portraying, specifically a true belief in the power of beauty. So, when an artist is making an artwork, the main objective should be to portray beauty and to capture beauty. And perhaps there's a degree of it which should be portraying nature, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a portrayal or a reflection of nature. It can be something more abstract and it can still be beautiful. And oftentimes that is what art is. But what makes good art good is that the artist has a true passion and a true belief that what they're doing has power, that there is a power to beauty, and that what they're doing is capturing beauty, and they are trying actively to portray beauty. And that is ultimately what makes good art good art. And of course, that can manifest itself in different forms, like a medieval or a Renaissance artist might be trying to show a religious sense of beauty. They might be trying to show through art the power of religion and the power of God, and they might be trying to show how that power is beautiful, how the power of God is beautiful, how God himself is beautiful. But they're using art as a medium for that because they're trying to portray beauty through a specific lens. They're trying to show the power of God, and they're doing it in a beautiful way because they believe not only in the power of God, but in the power of beauty. And they believe that beauty can convince people the same way a rational argument can. So that's ultimately what I think what makes good art good art. So that is the case for medieval art, and of course the same goes for lots of others, like in the case of neoclassical art, like what was made during the French Revolution. A lot of this art was made to portray heroic scenes, and it was it was people that had a real strong belief in democracy and freedom and liberty and all these other ideas that came out of the Enlightenment and ultimately trace their origins back to like ancient Athens. But the people who made this kind of art had a strong and a true belief that this was true and that they could portray it in a way that's beautiful and that it is beautiful and that using this power of beauty you can convince people that this is true. So that is what makes good art good art. So what makes bad art bad art? Well, the opposite of that. Artists who don't necessarily have any sort of goal. There's not really an objective to their art. They're not trying to portray something. They're not trying to convince you of anything. They're not trying to really show anything. That's what makes bad art bad art. Now I don't have any examples off the top of my head. But I think some of it is intuitive. You can look at a painting and say, I do not like this painting because I just don't think it's very good. And a lot of times it's because that artist doesn't seem to really want to show anything. It doesn't look like they're trying to show anything or portray anything. It's just a painting that exists. And it's like there's not really any sense of beauty to it. There's not any sort of underlying belief. There's no belief in God or reason or anything else like that. It's just a painting, and that is what makes bad art. And this applies not only to paintings and visual art, but architecture and music and poetry. Poetry is a big one. I could make an even longer video talking about bad poetry and what makes poetry bad. But ultimately, yeah, that's a problem. I will talk a little bit about poetry. A lot of times, there is an interesting thing. You'll read poets, and they have a strong belief that poetry has power, that poetry has like a sort of spiritual power, transforming power. This is what good poets tend to believe. They have a strange view of themselves in poetry, and they think that poetry is like transforming people. That is the belief of a good poet. That's what Homer would have believed. That's what Walt Whitman would have believed of himself. That's what Shakespeare would have believed of himself. But bad poetry, which is a lot of the poetry you read now, does not have this view of itself. It's not trying to uh, transform. It's barely trying to show. Oftentimes, it's just saying. And of course, you don't necessarily need metaphor or rhyme or symbolism to make a poem good. And that's the thing. A lot of poetry that is written now doesn't have those elements. So people think that that's what makes it bad, but then you read a poem from like Walt Whitman that doesn't necessarily have any of those things, and it's good, and it reads well, and it hits you. And it's like, why is that? And it's because Walt Whitman believed in himself and his poetry. He believed that poetry had a transforming power, and it expressed itself in his poetry. And that's the difference between a good poet and a bad poet, a good artist and a bad artist. So ultimately, that's my thesis. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Goodbye.